Attention, ladies and gentlemen, we're now boarding. Take your seats.
Airports Company South Africa welcomes all our guests to the OR Tambo International Airport 2017 Service Excellence in Aviation Feather Awards.
Revving your engine, waiting for the rolling roar. Metal on attention, begging you to touch and go. Highway to the danger zone. Right into the danger zone. Heading into twilight, waiting for the birds to sing. Harder in the act, better than the intensity. Highway to the danger zone. Right into the danger zone. Closer to the edge is always where I burn to be. The further on the edge, the harder the intensity. Highway to the danger zone. Right into the danger zone. High into right into the danger zone. Sugar candy man. I met him out for dinner on a Friday night. He really had me working up an appetite. He had tattoos up and down his arm. It's nothing more dangerous than a boy with charm. He's a one-stop shop, makes the panties dry. He's a sweet talking sugar-coated candy man. A sweet talking sugar-coated candy man. What you gonna do it up, pop, shoot, pop, what you done with us, bow, bow, bow. Hey, shake it. Sweet on fire. He's a one-stop shop, makes my cherry pop. He's a sweet talking sugar-coated candy man. A sweet talking sugar-coated candy man. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, by now I'm getting all bothered and hot. When it gets my mouth, it really hits the spot. Yeah, it's like sugar cane. Good things come for boys who wait. Candy man, candy man, candy man, candy man.
Swinging on the vine, sipping from a bottle of vodka double wine.
Sweet sugar candy man.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our program director for the night, Claire Mawisa.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our incredible dancers, the Colossal Troupe. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard OR Tambo International Airport's 2017 Feather Awards. My name is Claire Mawisa, and I'll be your captain for this flight. Words I've always wanted to say. Please make sure that you buckle up, face forward, and enjoy this fantastic flight with us as we celebrate and have true appreciation of service excellence in aviation. I'm truly honored to be navigating tonight's proceedings on behalf of the OR Tambo International Airport's General Manager, Ms. Bongiwe Biki. Each of you make a meaningful and valuable contribution to the functioning and operations of the flagship airport. As Airports Company South Africa, we annually take the time to acknowledge and recognize our stakeholders' commitment, dedication, and diligence, and the outstanding service excellence within the aviation industry. Now, before we embark on tonight's journey, just a few things that you should note. Smoking can only happen in clearly demarcated areas, in the area outside on the balcony. The restrooms are located just outside this venue to your left and right-hand side. I would ask you please to now turn your phones on silent for the duration of the formalities for this evening, but we do want you to keep those cell phones on because we want you to tweet, share, take selfies if you must throughout this evening, and we would like you to share with our official hashtag for this evening, which is OR Tambo Service Excellence. That's hashtag OR Tambo Service Excellence. That's our hashtag for this evening, so we'll be looking out for all your incredible posts online. And if you are not following us on our social media platforms, please do so now. On Facebook, we are OR Tambo International Airport. On Twitter, we are at OR Tambo _int. And on Instagram, we are O_Tambo_airport. You have no excuse not to tweet. Now, something quite exciting is that Air Mauritius will be sponsoring an incredible prize this evening. So if you want to stand in line to win that incredible prize, I'll tell you what it is later on in this evening. Please make sure that you take a moment throughout tonight's proceedings and during dinner, which will be a bit later, to drop your business card in a fishbowl that is located in the registration desk. So if you saw a big fishbowl there, make sure that you get your business card in there because you do not want to miss out on the incredible prize that Air Mauritius has so generously sponsored. But to kickstart, yes, it deserves we don't even know what it is, but it's incredible. But to kick off tonight's proceedings, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call upon the MEC for Transport in Gauteng, the Honorable MEC Ishmael Vadi.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this function, particularly the Honorable Minister of Basic Education, a good friend of mine, Ms. Angie Motshekga, representatives from the Department of Transport's Regulating Committee, the acting chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Airports Company of South Africa, the Chief Executive Officer of ACSA and his Executive Committee, the General Manager of OR Tambo International Airport and her leadership team, all captains of industry from within the transport and aviation sectors, Major General Indaba from the South African Police Services, the Chief of Police from the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, Major General Isaac Jabulani Mapiyeye, other law enforcement agencies present here this evening, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pride and pleasure that I stand here to officially welcome you all to an extremely auspicious occasion. This is the first time I'm coming here, and I thought it would be maybe 200 people, but I'm actually astonished that it's a huge gathering of people, and the decor and the ambience and the atmosphere is absolutely beautiful. So thank you very much for that, Bongi. The Feather Awards is ACSA's premier stakeholder event, during which the company recognizes and rewards excellent performance in various categories within the airport environment. Under the banner of the theme for this year, Service Excellence in Aviation, tonight, OR Tambo International Airport will recognize a number of stakeholders in the aviation value chain who each play an important part in the successful running of this national key point. These include airlines, retailers, car rental companies, hotels, ground handlers, government agencies, and community-based non-profit organizations, amongst others. The spirit that underpins the Feather Awards is that excellence is not a once-off activity. And sometimes we think it's just, we'll become excellent overnight. No, it's not a once-off activity, but rather a journey of continuous reflection, benchmarking, improvement. These awards also demonstrate that no organization can run successfully without the strategic support from its key stakeholders and partners. As an airport operator, it is therefore vital for us to affirm each stakeholder and recognize how they are an integral part of achieving and maintaining service excellence at Africa's biggest and busiest airport. As the MEC for Roads and Transport in Gauteng, I cannot overemphasize the strategic national importance of airports as sovereign assets and as enablers of economic activity. Airports are major contributors of direct and indirect employment and business opportunities. And more we are talking about the concept of Aerotropolis. I've heard of airports that have now halls where weddings take place and parties take place. I've heard of airports where there are cinemas, so if you've got to stop over for 2-3 hours, you go and watch a movie rather than sitting in the lounge and fiddling with your cell phone. So it's a whole new concept of airports that are developing globally. And I think the whole Aerotropolis concept that we are talking about in the Gauteng provincial government, the Ekurhuleni Metropolitan Municipality, fits in with a new perspective, a new concept of airports. And some of the transport specialists say that if other centuries were centuries of shipping, of roads, etc., this century, the 21st century, is the century of airlines. So we're going to see, I think, much more importance being paid to airport development or Aerotropolis development or airport city development over the next few years, at least in our province. And therefore, it's so important that we be part of this event. We can share in the successes for all the stakeholders and all the participants who contribute to the success of the airport. So airports are major contributors, as I said, to employment and both direct and indirect and business opportunities. Airports continue to drive country economies and connect people all over the world. OR Tambo International Airport, which is our busiest airport on the continent, has no less than 50,000 people working within the airport environment. I actually didn't know that. I thought there were a few thousand people, but the figures are 50,000 alone within the airport precinct and surrounding activities. This alone is an indicator of the complexity of the operations and the seamless collaboration needed to successfully run such a complex facility. This, in essence, is what this evening's proceedings are about. So in closing, I would like to commend and congratulate the Airports Company of South Africa, its board of directors, the CEO and his executive team, and the general manager of OR Tambo International Airport and her leadership team for the tireless work that they have put in this year and every year before this. I would like to congratulate all the award recipients who will be recognized this evening. Tonight, we celebrate along with you. So congratulations to all the award recipients. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not a night for long speeches. Please feel welcome and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much.
Now for our keynote address, ladies and gentlemen. And for this evening, it will be delivered by a man who has vast experience in the development and implementation of business strategies. Professor Nick Benadel is the founding director and Sasol Chair of Strategic Management of the Gordon Institute of Business Science, a business school situated here in Ilovo in Johannesburg and established in January 2000 by the University of Pretoria. After an initial career in the mining and manufacturing sectors in sales and general management in the Barlow Rand Group, Nick has focused his career for the past 20 years in the area of business education. In 1998, he was invited to establish a new business school focused on meeting the individual and corporate needs of business South Africa. The school has rapidly established itself as a leading business school in South Africa with a strong focus on partnering with leading South African corporates and providing a high level of local and international business education. It was recently ranked as one of the top 40 global executive education providers by the London Financial Times. His area of expertise is in the field of business strategy formulation, and his academic and consulting work through dominantly in South Africa also includes work in the United States, Europe, and Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our keynote speaker this evening, Professor Nick Benadel.
Thanks very much, Claire, and good evening, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you, Minister, MEC, and all the distinguished guests that are here tonight that make ACSA what it is. I, like probably all of you, am a regular user and a fan of ORT. At least 4 times a month I make my way through, and with our Gau train and checking in, and if I'm going overseas through immigration, getting on the plane, to me it's still an extraordinary thing that I can go to sleep on an airplane and wake up in another continent, all because of the outstanding service of all the interlocking, interdependent service providers. So whether we're talking about freight or about passengers, it's a feature of the modern world that we live in, that our airlines are like the arteries of commerce, the sharing of ideas, the connectivity between countries. And so I'm delighted to be with you on the special occasion when you're recognizing the people that really have made a difference. So thank you for inviting me to share a few thoughts. I'm very mindful by now that you're chewing your fingers, and I'm always aware as a speaker, never get between a group and its dinner. So I'm going to be quick this evening. As I drove in, I thought, as I often do, because Gibbs, the business school, is just down the road in Sandton, of what Sandton represents. That as I travel around the continent, this extraordinary continent we live in, that there is nothing like Sandton in Africa. Sandton, in a sense, and its environment around it, which include ORT, are the center of the center of the center of the African economy. You may know, and I'm sure I don't need to remind you too much, that there is no country in the world of our size economy that has produced more globally competitive companies than South Africa. For a country of our size, in the private sector, often assisted by other stakeholders and players such as airlines, such as airports, South African business has been a dynamic energy in the world. Certainly in the last 20 years, our companies have spread their wings around the world with the backing of the airlines and of ACSA. So I'm always mindful that there's a dynamism about South Africa, in spite of the many, many challenges we face. And I look back, as I'm sure you are, on an extraordinary year 2017 has been. And we're all going to take a break probably and go and chill out a bit and reflect about what the year's been about, the many, many challenges. But the truth is, we are a very resilient society. And we contest and we argue and we criticize, but something about the DNA of this strange and wonderful country is that we're able to run an airport like ORT, to run the airlines, 42 airlines coming in and out, 18 million passengers. It's a logistical miracle. It's an extraordinary thing. And when I get on that car train, I know I'm already on the plane and I'm on my way. And I think, Bongiwe, you and your team do deserve the credit that you're getting tonight, and with all your partners and stakeholders, for really making that happen. So once again, very, very well done. We live... You and I are privileged to live in one of the most disruptive eras of human history. The speed of change and its acceleration is something that challenges us all. It challenges us as individuals, as human beings. It challenges us about the way we work and where we work and how we work and the organizations we work in. It challenges us as communities and indeed as countries to absorb and to learn and to innovate at the rate of change that is happening all around us. We really are living in a remarkable era. Human beings have never made progress and change in all of human history at the rate that we are today. Driven largely by technology and a digital economy, as my imagination starts to run through what an airport is, what airlines are, what all the logistics and the deeply embedded information-rich knowledge resource processes that we are beginning to absorb, what they mean for how we live. We truly live in an extraordinary time. I think of just some very simple facts. In 1800, there were 1 billion people on the planet. In the 1950s, there were 2.5 billion people. We are now 7 billion people on this planet, more than likely going to grow to 12 and 15 billion. We are the dominant species. Our ingenuity, our resilience, our imagination have created this incredible rate of progress, which is not incremental, it is exponential. And we are living in an exponential time. And the challenge we all have as citizens, as consumers, as employees, as voters, is to make decisions about what's right for next. Next is where we're moving so quickly, at times it almost seems unimaginable. If I just think of the speed of change in technology and the notion of connectivity and how money and goods and people and ideas flow around this planet and the speed with which they flow, the challenge for us when we look in the mirror as leaders is to ask ourselves deep questions about what is our role? Why are we in the room? How did we get in the room? What are we doing in the room? And most importantly of all, in an era of extraordinary change, how are we going to get out of the room? The one thing I can share with you that I think you all know, given what we've been through in the last 3 or 4 years, is how we've got in the room and what we're doing in the room is not how we're going to get out of the room. And that as a society, as a country, in this remarkable place we call home, it's our speed of learning that has to accelerate. And comes with learning is the speed of unlearning, of abandoning ideas and practices and systems, because they simply don't give us what we need in this remarkable era of change. Martin Luther King, when he was in the jail in Alabama and Birmingham, wrote a letter. He said, "The tragedy of revolutions is that most people sleep through them." And I will urge you as you end the year, as exhausted as we probably all are, is to take some time in the next few weeks and ask yourself, at a personal level, what is this journey of learning and unlearning for you? Are you connected to the speed of change and probing and looking for the frontiers of how to reorganize our lives? Tonight, we're celebrating achievement in logistics. But as I said earlier, logistics was a mechanical thing. It's now an information-rich thing. And at the frontier of learning is extraordinary technology that is going to radically reorganize how we live, how long we live, where we live, and how we work. It's a remarkable thing that all around the planet, if you take the average lifespan of human beings, this generation will live 30 years longer than their grandparents. Sweden is debating a retirement age of 75. If you are living in America with today's knowledge of medical technology, you should live to 100, which means a big market for skin cream. We are living in an unparalleled era. South Africa, I think, often behaves like an island. It's true that our borders are surrounded 2/3 by sea, and in a way, an unfortunate truth is our neighbors don't really challenge us economically, because they're small economies, some of them in fair shape, like Botswana, some of them in bad shape. So we don't have a visible sense of rivalry. It almost becomes an intangible, a thing we read about or look at. When I go to Silicon Valley, or I go to Osaka, or I go to London, and compare the experiences I'm having and how these societies are moving and creating and absorbing technology, I do sometimes worry about our isolation. Logistically, of course, we're at the end of a zone. We're well placed in the time zone, but we're a long way from the hubs that will drive the global economy. I used to think that Benoni was the Far East. And then I started traveling to Asia, where I bond very happily with people my height, and discover that there are 3 billion people who are the energy and the center of the 21st century still to come. And coming soon to a theater near us is an extraordinary region of China, India, and Southeast Asia, where over 3 billion people in the last 20 years have stood up and grown at 3 or 4 times the rate of our country. And I do want to say this in the few remarks in the opportunity tonight, that I believe, and I think many of you will agree with me, that economic growth is the oxygen of our democracy. That without economic growth, this project of transformation that is the byproduct of liberation represented by a man like Oliver Tambo, without economic growth, the transformation project will either become desperate or dry up. Economic growth is the absolute central pillar of making this country heal its past and offer to a younger generation the prosperity and stability and prospects that we all, 56 million people of us, are hoping for. And it's our generation's task in this long relay of the story of South Africa's history to make sure we hand over to those young people a viable, stable, prosperous country, able to take advantage not of mining, which was our history, but of knowledge-rich, intensive service economies, which is really what we are today. And to do that, we need an education system that will provide the knowledge, the installed knowledge in all South Africans to compete on a level playing field against our natural competitors, which will be everybody. And if we don't get that right, if we don't summon that skill and insight and commitment, it's very hard to see how we can sustain what we've set out to do in the last 20 years. I love the airport. I was at a dinner about a year or so ago, and we were having a quiz, a Trivial Pursuit quiz, and there was a 10-year-old boy at the dinner, and someone said to this 10-year-old boy, tell us about Nelson Mandela, and the boy knew a lot, and he'd read his Juta history book, and he rattled off a few things about Madiba. And then someone asked him, well, who was Walter Sisulu? He said, yeah, I don't know who Walter Sisulu was. And who was Oliver Tambo? And he put up his hand, he said, I know. So he said, what's the answer? He built an airport, he said. I think it's fantastic that we've acknowledged Oliver Tambo's extraordinary role in the leadership, sometimes not recognized as much as it should, as the man who played such a central role in taking us to where we got to in the 1990s. But our legacy is not going to get us into the next fight. And countries have to compete. And we have to understand that there's this challenge of connecting this country, both intellectually, technologically, digitally, if you like, culturally, to the best practices in the world. My motto as an educator is learn from everyone and copy no one, because each of us face a different set of challenges. But the truth is, as South Africans, we have to have the confidence to step up and learn from the best wherever it is. And I fear in the current climate, there's a little bit of introspection, a loss of confidence, a little bit of looking behind us and not enough ahead of us. And that's why I was so taken by Bongiwe's comments. We've got to be a generation that looks ahead. As a resident of Johannesburg, look at our history and realize it's an extraordinary thing about this country. That in 1886, a man called George Harrison, who was a prospector working for the widow Petronella Besadenhout on the farm Langlaagte on the Witwatersrand, stepped out on a Sunday with his prospecting pick and made the extraordinary discovery, along with some others, of the gold. Because I come from Cape Town, I can say this, that in colonial history, Cape Town was established in 1652. And Johannesburg, as you all know, was 1886. If you subtract 1652 from 1886, we gave the people in Cape Town a 234-year head start. And we overtook them in about 8 years. They still haven't recovered. They've got the mountain. We've got everything else. When I think back to the kinds of characters and the values, as awkward as our history often is, as we still try and find each other and tell the story of our past in a way that resolves the question of liking and getting on with each other. As we struggle with that narrative, I think of the pioneering spirit that made this the largest city in the world, not on a lake, a river, or the sea. That was built on the back of mining, of labor, of which we took advantage of and which is part of our history. But we can't let go of the good. And the good was that pioneering people developed new ideas and new technologies, which made this, at various times, the fastest growing country in the world, one of the great cities which we are the inheritors of. And while we've moved from the CBD to Sandton, the truth is that we have these great organizations. We have amazing infrastructure for a country of our history. We have incredible institutions. Yes, some have been damaged, but we have them. And when I travel to Kinshasa or Addis or Accra or Lagos, I don't see what we've got here. And it would be folly, it would be a terrible error for this generation of leaders to misunderstand this core legacy, this incredible asset that is not just physical, but that is a human asset with all of our history, that South Africa can be the driving grower of an economy with a different generation. And that's the urgent challenge of our time. So let me end by saying that ACSA, the airlines, Home Affairs, the Gautrain, everybody that contributes to the logistics of making this organization function, all deserve great credit for what they've done. Because as Derek said, in fact, as I travel to many airports, this is a pretty outstanding business that we have here. But more importantly, for all South Africans, it's a huge asset. No country will survive the 21st century without innovation and digging deep and doing things differently. So let me close by encouraging you during the break to think deeply about 2018 and what difference we're all going to make in a partnership that really, really can begin to work. Let me end by telling you a story about an athlete that many of you will remember, Josiah Tongwane. Do you remember Josiah Tongwane? He was the marathon runner. I happened by accident to be at a hotel as the marathon began in Atlanta when he won the gold medal. And a friend of mine, Tony Frost, was the SABC sports athletics commentator. And so the runners assembled and the gun went off, and Josiah Tongwane, believe it or not, went straight to the front. And he led the pack. And after about 15 minutes into the marathon, Tony Frost, the athletics expert and good friend of mine, said, the problem of South Africans competing at this level is they go too soon, too fast. I watched the race. Josiah Tongwane won it. He won the gold. And about 4 weeks later, I bumped into my good friend Tony Frost. And I said, Tony, I'm afraid you made a bit of an idiot of yourself. He said, it's much worse than that, Nick. He said, I was in the Olympic Village the night before the marathon, and I was interviewing Ezekiel Sepeng and the other runners, and then we turned off the cameras because there were other athletes were unknown to us. And so I turned to Josiah Tongwane, and I said, who are you? And he said, I'm Josiah Tongwane. And Frost said to him, "What event are you in?" He said, I'm running in the marathon. And so Tony Frost said to him, "How are you going to do?" And Josiah Tongani said, "I'm going to win." And Tony Frost says to him, "What on earth makes you think you're going to win?" And he says, "When I run in Mpumalanga, there are 5,000 runners. There are only 150 here." So let me end by saying we are going to have that chutzpah, that acumen, that cheek, that harachat nature of saying we've inherited an amazing set of assets. Looking at those expansion plans, the rest of the country's job, government's job, the private sector's job is to grow this economy that will make those plans that you put up tonight come about. As T. Lawrence said in his beautiful poem, "All people dream, but not equally. Some dream in the dusty recess of their minds when they are sleeping, and when they wake, their dream was a myth. Others," he said, "dream in the harsh light of day with their eyes open and act to make their dreams come true." I hope you managed to do that. Thank you for inviting me.